The night was quiet in that old station. The kind of quiet that feels like it has been waiting for years. A soft wind moved through the wooden beams. Snow drifted down in slow steady whispers. John Carter stood beside his horse. His hands worn from years of work. His coat heavy with dust and memory. He had arrived later than planned. Trains did not run as they once did. And people did not gather here anymore. He noticed her only after he tied the reins. She sat on a wooden bench, wrapped in a red blanket, her head resting on her folded arms. Asleep or maybe just resting from a long road. Her face was calm but tired. The kind of tired that comes from carrying too much life alone. John did not move at first. He simply watched, not with suspicion, but with quiet concern. He had seen many people pass through places like this. Travelers, dreamers, those who had lost something, and those still searching. He stepped closer slowly, not wanting to startle her. Snow gathered lightly on her shoulders, but she did not stir. He cleared his throat gently. She opened her eyes. They were soft eyes, deep and steady, the kind that had seen more than they spoke. For a moment they said nothing. Then John, not pitying, just an offer, plain and simple. She studied him. People learn to read faces when they have had to rely on strangers. And she had learned well. You do not know me, she said softly. John nodded. That is true, but I know what cold feels like. And I know what it means to have nowhere to go. That is enough for tonight. She looked down at her hands. They were rough like his. What would I give in return? She asked. John shook his head. Nothing. A warm fire does not ask for payment. It just burns. She let out a slow breath. Her name was Mary. She stood carefully, as if her body had forgotten what rest felt like. John took the horse reins. And without another word, they began to walk. The road to his home was quiet. Snow softened their steps. The world seemed slower here. Mary wrapped the blanket tighter. John noticed. It is not far, he said. She nodded. I have walked farther for less. There was no bitterness in her voice. Just truth. After some time, they reached a small house. It was not grand, but it stood strong, with a light glowing from the window. Home. John opened the door. Warmth greeted them like an old friend. He set more wood on the fire. The flames rose gently. Mary stepped inside slowly, as if unsure she belonged. You are safe here, John said. Those words settled in the room. Not loud, but steady. He brought her a chair. Sit. She sat. He poured water into a cup, and handed it to her. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from finally stopping. John turned away for a moment, giving her space. People need space to feel safe. He had learned that long ago. Would you like food? He asked. Mary nodded. Yes. He prepared something simple. Bread, warm stew, nothing fancy, but enough. She ate slowly, every bite careful, as if she had learned not to expect more. You can eat freely, John said gently. There is enough. She looked at him. Then she ate a little faster. Not rushed, just trusting. After the meal, silence returned, but it was not empty silence. It was the kind that allows rest. John sat across from her. You can stay here as long as you need. Mary hesitated. People often say that, she said, but they do not always mean it. John leaned back. I do not say things I do not mean. That was all. No long speech. No promise wrapped in fancy words. Just honesty. Mary looked into the fire. I had a home once, she said. So did I, John replied. She glanced at him. What happened? He paused. Time happened. Life moves. People change. Some leave. Some are taken. And sometimes, you are left standing in a quiet room, wondering how it got so still. Mary nodded slowly. Yes, that is how it feels. They sat there. Two lives shaped by loss, but not broken, just quieter. That night, Mary slept in a small room. The bed was simple, but clean. She lay down carefully, as if expecting it to disappear. But it did not. Sleep came slowly, then deeply, the kind of sleep that heals. Morning arrived gently. Sunlight touched the window. Mary opened her eyes. For a moment she did not remember where she was. Then she did. She sat up. The house was still. She stepped outside. John was already there, feeding the horse. Good morning, he said. Good morning. She looked around. It was peaceful. "You can help if you like," he said. "Or you can rest." Mary stepped closer. "I will help. Work brings peace," she added. John smiled slightly. "That it does." Days passed. Mary stayed. At first she kept her distance, helping quietly, speaking only when needed. But time has a way of softening walls. She began to talk more. About small things. About the way snow sounds different on wood and earth. About how mornings feel lighter when you have somewhere to be. John listened. He was a good listener. Not because he had answers, but because he respected words. One evening, they sat outside. The sky was wide and clear. Mary spoke. "Why did you help me?" John thought for a moment. "Because someone once helped me." "That's simple." He nodded. "I was younger, lost in a different way. An old man gave me shelter. No questions, no expectations, just kindness. And it stayed with me." Mary looked at him. "Kindness travels," she said. "Yes," John replied. "It does." She smiled faintly. It had been a long time since she smiled. Weeks turned into months. Mary became part of the home. Not as a guest, but as someone who belonged. She fixed things, cooked meals, tended the small garden when spring arrived. John noticed something. The house felt different, warmer, not just from the fire, but from shared life. One afternoon, Mary found an old box. Inside were letters. She held them carefully. "Your family?" she asked. John nodded. "Yes." He did not say much more. Mary placed the box back. "Some things do not need to be opened again." That evening, she said something softly. "You gave me more than a place to stay." John looked at her. "You gave me a place to return to." John considered that. Then he nodded. "And you gave this house a voice again." They sat quietly. No need for more words. Years passed gently. The world outside changed, but inside that small home, life remained steady. Neighbors came to know them. They spoke of John and Mary, not as strangers, but as people who built something simple and strong. A place where no one was turned away. A place where kindness was not a rare thing, but a daily one. One winter evening, much like the first, snow fell softly. Mary sat by the fire. John beside her. "Do you remember the station?" she asked. "I do," he said. "I was very tired," she said. "I could have stayed there forever." John shook his head. "No, you were just waiting." She looked at him. "For what?" He smiled. "For a door to open." Mary nodded. "Yes, for a door." She leaned back. "Sometimes life does not give you what you expect, but it gives you what you need." John added, "If you are willing to accept it." They sat together, warm, calm, at peace, and in that quiet, there was a kind of wisdom, not spoken loudly, not written in books, but lived, a simple truth, that kindness does not require wealth, that respect does not require status, that a home is not built by walls alone, but by the people who choose to care. And sometimes, all it takes, is one quiet moment, one gentle voice, saying, "Come home with me if you want," and meaning it. The fire continued to burn, steady and warm, just as it had from the beginning. The years had settled gently around that little home, like snow that no longer felt cold. Time had a way of smoothing the sharp edges of life, and what once felt heavy, now felt understood. John's hair had turned more silver than brown, and his steps had grown slower, but his eyes still held the same quiet steadiness. Mary, too, had changed, not in spirit, but in peace. The tiredness that once lived in her face had softened into something calmer, something rooted. That winter evening carried a familiar hush. The fire crackled softly, the same way it had on the night she arrived. Mary sat wrapped in a shawl, her hands resting in her lap. John poured tea into 2 cups. He moved carefully, but with purpose. Some habits never leave, they simply become slower. He handed her a cup. "Here you go." "Thank you." Their voices were gentle, as if they had learned not to disturb the quiet. Outside, snow drifted again. It reminded them both of another night. Long ago, and yet not so far away. Mary looked into the fire. "Do you ever wonder," she began slowly, "what might have happened if you had not come to the station that night?" John sat down beside her. "I used to," he admitted. "And now?" she asked. "Now I do not." "Why?" "Because it did happen. That is enough for me." Mary smiled softly. Yes, that is enough. They sipped their tea. The warmth settled into their hands. Then deeper. After a while, Mary spoke again. Someone came by today. John raised his eyes. Oh, a young woman. She was asking about work. John listened. There was something in her voice. She continued. Something familiar. John nodded slowly. And what did you do? Mary looked at him. I told her she could come back tomorrow. John smiled. That sounds like you. Mary shook her head gently. No, that sounds like you. They shared a quiet smile. Kindness had a way of changing hands. Like a story passed from one voice to another. The next morning came with pale light. The young woman arrived just as she said she would. Her name was Sarah. She stood at the door. Unsure. Much like Mary once had. Mary opened it. Come in. Sarah hesitated. I do not want to be a burden. Mary's expression softened. Neither did I. But sometimes we do not get to choose how we arrive. Only what we do after. Sarah stepped inside. The warmth greeted her, just as it had greeted Mary years before. John watched quietly. He saw the same moment unfold again. Different faces. Same need. Same simple answer. Sit down, Mary said. Sarah sat. Her hands were cold. Mary placed a cup of tea before her. Drink. Sarah looked at her. Thank you. John leaned back in his chair. He did not interrupt. Some things are better passed on without too many voices. Days turned into weeks again. Sarah stayed. At first just helping. Then slowly becoming part of the rhythm. The house did not feel crowded. It felt fuller. There is a difference. Evenings became shared again. 3 voices now instead of 2. 3 quiet lives moving together. One evening, Sarah asked a question. Why do you help people like me? Mary looked at John, then back at Sarah. Because someone helped me. Sarah frowned slightly. And them. Mary nodded toward John. Someone helped him too. Sarah looked down. So it just keeps going. John spoke this time. Only if people choose to continue it. Sarah was quiet. Then she said, I would like to continue it. Mary smiled. Then you already have. Spring came slowly. The snow melted. The earth softened. New life pushed its way through the ground. The garden grew again. Mary worked with steady hands. Sarah beside her. John watched from the porch. He no longer worked as hard in the soil. But he still guided. That plant needs more space. He would say. And that one needs patience. Sarah laughed one afternoon. Everything needs patience here. John smiled. That is because life does. They all shared a quiet understanding. Patience, kindness, time. These were the things that built their home. Not money, not status, just steady care. One afternoon, John sat alone for a while. The sun was warm, but his breath felt heavier. Mary noticed. She walked over. You should rest. I am resting, he said gently. But she could hear the difference. Some changes cannot be hidden. That evening, John spoke quietly. We have had a good life here. Mary sat beside him. Yes, more than I ever expected. He nodded. That is often the best kind. Sarah listened from across the room. A quiet understanding settled over all 3. Time was moving again, in its own way. Days became softer. John spent more time in his chair by the window. Watching the land, watching the life they had built. One morning, he called Mary and Sarah to sit with him. His voice was calm, just as it had always been. Do not let this place become empty. Mary held his hand. It will not. He looked at Sarah. You understand now. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Yes. He smiled. That is enough. Those were not his last words. But they were the ones that mattered most. When John passed, it was quiet. No struggle. No fear. Just a gentle closing. Like the end of a long day. Mary sat by the fire that night. The same fire. It burned steadily. Sarah sat beside her. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Mary said, he never asked for anything. Sarah shook her head. No, but he gave everything. Mary nodded. Yes, that is how some people live. They do not take up space. They create it. The days that followed were filled with quiet work. Not just grief, but care. The house remained open, just as John had wished. Travelers came. Some stayed. Some moved on. But all were treated the same. With respect. With warmth. Years passed again. Mary grew older. Her steps slower now. much like John's had become. Sarah carried more of the work. But she never carried it alone. Because Mary was still there. Guiding, listening. One evening, much like the first, snow began to fall. Mary sat by the window. Sarah joined her. "Do you remember your first night here?" Sarah asked. Mary smiled. "I do. I was afraid." Sarah nodded. "So was I." Mary looked at her. "And now?" Sarah smiled softly. "Now I understand." Mary leaned back. "That is what matters. Understanding. Not where you start, but what you learn." The fire burned quietly. Its light steady. Mary closed her eyes for a moment. Then she spoke one last time. Almost like a whisper. "Keep the door open." Sarah took her hand. "I will." And she did. The house remained. The fire continued. And the words that began it all were never lost. They lived on. In every act of kindness. In every open door. In every quiet offer of shelter. "Come home with me if you want." Not just spoken, but lived. And in that simple life, there was something lasting, a reminder that the greatest wealth is not what we keep, but what we give, and that even the smallest kindness can travel farther than we ever see. The snow fell gently outside, but inside, there was warmth, there was life,